Fabulous. Welcome back, everyone. And you thought we wouldn't kick it off again. Well, haha, we totally did. Welcome, kia ora, kia ora, kia ora. Welcome, everyone, to the Exceptional Student Series from Academy X. This series is all about celebrating bold learners who are transforming their thinking and their industries through powerful real-world projects. And it allows us to brag a little bit about the exceptional number of smarty pants that come through our hallowed hallways here. Each conversation in this series spotlights an Academy X graduate whose story reminds us that learning isn't just about what you know, it's about how you apply it, because that's what we do here is how do you apply your learning? Our students, as you know, don't wait for change to happen, they make it happen. And when you're here to be inspired, challenged, or simply reminded that you belong in the future of leadership, well, congratulations, you are in the right place. So, what I would love to do today is to introduce you to a guest whose work may speak softly but lands powerfully. Max Wallace is a strategist, researcher, and inclusion advocate where master's research at Academy X explored what it truly means for rainbow professionals to thrive, not just survive, in Aotearoa, New Zealand's workplaces. Through interviews, data, and deep listening, Max developed a bold, evidence-based framework beyond the rainbow ceiling. It's a two-phase roadmap designed to move organizations from surface-level inclusion to actual systemic equality and equity, and embedding inclusion into business KPIs. Max's work makes it clear the rainbow ceiling won't dismantle itself, but with care and courage, maybe we can redesign the structure of the room entirely. Max, thank you for being here. You are exceptional.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou. Thank you for having me.
It's such a joy. It's really great to have you come here, considering how kind of bananas the world is right now, especially when it comes to the idea that, we as various levels of community need to be able to work together. And, coming from the United States with the dismantling of a lot of the structures and practices that encourage people to work together in a way that does bring everyone in, I find that this conversation is going to be particularly useful, not only for my own practice, but I think also when we start sort of how we look at the world at large. How's the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion working for you, being that this is your day-to-day
Yeah.
bread and butter?
Yeah, DEI is in a very challenging space right now as a practice. There's so much backlash happening, even politically in Aotearoa. You can see the dismantling of those jobs and roles in central government started happening last year and is continuing into this year. They're starting to, propose changes to legislation to remove equity directly, where it's referenced in legislation. And it really feels like in the last couple of years, the pendulum swung the other way. So we were doing, particularly in the Western world, we were going great guns around equity and inclusion in organizations and government organizations as well. And then it's like we're seeing the backlash now, like the pendulum is coming back. Um, but I think the key for me and how I kind of frame it so I stay sane is just knowing that more than ever before, like this is the time for passionate people like me to remain really committed and to do everything I can to build resilience for myself, but also in the practice that we're doing as inclusion specialists so that we can resist the backlash as much as possible because the backlash will, the pendulum will come back and we'll be stronger than ever because we will have gone through this time of trials and tribulations. That's kind of what I'm hanging my hopes on.
I think that is, as they say, Mr. Rogers said it best: when it gets tough, look for the helpers. And if you can't find one, then you got to be one. And I love that that resilience is where you're investing thought and time right now. So why don't we start us off? Let's go back to the beginning a little bit. For those who haven't met you before, how would you describe the work that you do and what brought you to Academy X in the first place?
Um, I'm really passionate about workplace cultures and how workplace culture really significantly affects your overall business and organizational outcomes. I think it's an area that is only just in modern, like recent modern times, really starting to be understood, and the research is coming thick and fast internationally around how workplace culture really is one of the biggest levers you can pull to have success in workplaces, and how enabling individuals to thrive creates the collective outcomes and goals that business leaders and owners are looking for. So that's kind of where my early passion started. And I looked at Academy X because in the master's program, because I was really looking for something that would help me build my kitty of tools so that I could become even better in this space. Rather than just being a passionate observer, I wanted to really get my teeth into it and learn how to affect change, but put some capabilities under my belt so that I knew what I was doing rather than just talking about it and winging it. So that's kind of how it all started.
I think adulting is learning how to wing it with a lot less air pressure. So tell me about what are you most proud of in this journey? For those who happen to see the events picture, Max is fully kitted out in his graduation regalia and has one of the best smiles and grins of achievement that I've seen in a long time. Uh, Tell me about your experience. What are you most proud of in this journey, either as a researcher, as a student, or as a graduate?
That's actually one of the hardest questions to answer because there's so many milestones on the journey that just filled me with immense pride in myself and how far I was coming along. So I think the first bit of pride I had was actually starting the journey because I left school at 15 and I just had what was school certificate, so that's showing my age a bit. Um, and I had only subsequently done a little diploma through Southern Institute of Technology around coaching, and that was the only foray I had into tertiary education. So just getting in the program for me was an incredible achievement. And then realizing that I had the possibility of making some positive impact for rainbow communities and workplaces. Like once I had, because it was a very roundabout journey for me to get to my project topic. Um, Once I knew that, that was another thing I was proud of. Like even before I started, like I can actually do something here. Like this is a vehicle that's going to enable me to create something hopefully useful. Um, but yes, probably the biggest moment was graduation because of all of everything that I just said, like not having a tertiary degree previously, not even knowing if I could do tertiary academic study well, not knowing if I would finish, and then actually getting to the end and then having that Yahoo moment where you actually get to put on all of the regalia and the funny hat and be excited with your peers and cry and laugh because you're so overwhelmed with a sense of achievement and also relief that it's all over. Um, yeah, it was a pretty awesome experience, graduation. And then being given an award was incredibly humbling and very surprising because I had a lot of imposter syndrome, going into this whole process and not wasn't at all aware of how good I was doing until that moment. That really hit me.
Well, shall we just do a little Yahoo together? Like one, two, three, Yahoo!
Yahoo! Yeah,
Okay, thank you for doing that. I always want a Yahoo is always well timed. Far out, there's a lot to unpack there. I'm
yeah.
always fascinated with I love talking to people like you who have, created their own path and their own plan, especially when it comes to education. And um, when did education become the solution that you were looking for? I'd love to know that moment where regular education didn't work for you and you were really not sure about doing postgraduate work. What was that moment that you were like, oh wait, no, this is what I need to do right now?
Um, it was as I mentioned, it was about me trying to understand how can I build my toolkit because I was in the middle of this career pivot from working in technology management for a couple of decades to wanting to really hone in on workplace culture and its impact on performance. And I knew that I couldn't just wing it. Like it's not the sort of stuff that I felt I could read enough books on and just acquire knowledge or listen to podcasts or it was not that kind of capabilities. I really wanted to understand a lot more about organizational culture and how to interpret the research that I wanted to understand, but I didn't have the background in the tertiary experience, and I couldn't understand an academic article to save my life prior to this, for example. So it was, those thinking about those sorts of skills that I needed to build. And I actually had the privilege of having a cup of tea with Frances, and she said, "Oh boy, have we got the program for you?" Because it was just when MCOR was starting out. So I was in cohort one for MCOR. Yeah. So it was just perfect timing in that sense that Academy X had the right program for me that was perfect for my career pivot and the tools that I needed to build.
Ah, the Master of Change and Organizational Resilience Cohort 1. How exciting to be part of that initial phase.
It was very exciting.
Yeah. So, was there a moment in the program where everything sort of clicked and you felt, oh, wait, no, you know, one of this is exactly what I needed. This is where I needed to be. It sounded like you had a journey to find your research project, your capstone project. And that was a big moment. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Um, right. So the project I was initially going to be doing was going to be in the context of Three Waters, water reform, because that's where I was working at that time. And it was going to be about establishing a new workplace culture in an organization that doesn't exist yet, but we know all of the staff who are coming into it. And so I was going to be an interesting, hopefully, experiment of designing a workplace culture in a kind of co-creation process with the incoming employees. And they were potentially going to be from all the different technology departments throughout the water service entities of New Zealand. So that was going to be what my project was. However, water reform got thrown in the can, and I didn't have a job anymore as a result of water reform being chucked out by the government. And so I needed to do a fast pivot, like halfway through the master's program, and work out, oh dear, what's my new direction? And it was actually plan A, which was to do the rainbow ceiling, because that was initially what I was, that's where my heart is, my passion is. That's what I was drawn to. But I thought, here's an opportunity through the masters to do something in a work context. And so I kind of pivoted towards prioritizing work more than I'd prioritize my own passion and heart. But it turns out the universe had other ideas for me, and I went right back to the heart-led work, which was about working on something that can be useful for the rainbow communities in our workplaces in Aotearoa.
It's funny how the universe will hit you upside the head with that sort of stuff. For those of us who may not be familiar with the term rainbow community, do you want to just give us a quick idea of who and what the rainbow community is?
It's so very generally, the rainbow communities are made up of, and there's lots of acronyms, but as the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and many, many more different identities around your sexual orientation and your gender and any sort of communities that are differing from the kind of cultural norm of very binary male, female, and heteronormative, like men and women get married and have babies. Anything outside of that norm is often lumped under the umbrella of rainbow communities.
Right.
So it's a very, very mixed and gloriously eclectic bunch of communities that make up the rainbow.
Fabulous. And when we talk about the rainbow ceiling, what do you mean by that?
So the rainbow ceiling, I first read about in a book that came out of Britain. I wish I could remember the author's name. I'll post it in the chat later. And she had identified that in Britain there was a rainbow ceiling, and that's where I first heard the term. And I thought, hey, that makes sense because she explained it in a way that was very similar to the terminology we used to around thinking about gender equity with men and women in organizations and the glass ceiling that we talk about for women. And so she's just added to the term and called it a rainbow ceiling to think about that same construct of a glass ceiling, but in the context of our rainbow communities and organizations. Yes, it was Layla McKay. That's perfect.
Oh, well done. Tell me about I mean, I've got a bunch of scratches and nicks on my head from banging up against the glass ceiling. What is that? How does that practice show? How does that ceiling show up for a rainbow community?
It shows up in a number of ways which will sound very familiar to you, right? Which is unconscious bias, explicit discrimination, covert discrimination. It will also show up in sexism, and a lot of tokenism, particularly in Aotearoa organizations, where we pretend to be inclusive outwardly because it's good for our brand. But if you actually talk to our employees, which is what I got to do through this research, it's actually not so shiny under the hood. Um, yeah, it's also about things like pay equity. So we don't have a great amount of data in any detail in Aotearoa around pay equity, but the indicators are there that say that we've got some challenges in pay equity. For example, in 2022, Stats released some income information that said transgender and non-binary workers are paid around 24.4% less than their peers.
Mm.
So just even thinking about that statistic blows my mind a bit and makes me want to look into that more and try and affect some change.
Absolutely. So your research from this led you to the Beyond the Rainbow Ceiling framework, which was your research project.
Yeah.
Walk us through quickly through, I know having done a research project myself that I've just opened up the door for a 4-hour conversation, but in a 40-second version,
Mm.
what, tell me what the two phases of the framework are and why this matters.
Right. So the first phase is about it's the intention is to make a practical guide so that HR and organizational development professionals and business leaders and owners can have a practical framework that shows them how to create safety and belonging in the first phase, which is, where a lot of our organizations that do work in this space, they are in that phase of let's try our best to create inclusion, safety and belonging. And then the second phase, the goal is really about once you've got that safety and inclusion, how do we enable our rainbow kaimahi, our staff, our workers to thrive and succeed? So it's going beyond just you're safe here to actually you're safe and you can have aspirations and career goals, and we're going to support you and enable you to achieve them.
Mm.
So the second phase is all about thriving, enabling our rainbow people to grow their careers and to lead in organizations and to just really have goals and have the mechanisms within organizations to achieve them.
And are you applying this framework to your own organization? Are you seeing any organizations beginning to apply this, or what are you noticing so far?
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations, so part of the beauty of the co-creation process that I went through with the participants in my research and the experts that are already working in the rainbow inclusion space around Aotearoa was identifying then the things that organizations are already doing and folding them into the framework, but also adding the things that they might not be doing yet. And so, as I mentioned before, a lot of organizations are already really doing great work in the inclusion and safety space, but they aren't investing as much as they could be, in my opinion, and they're thriving. So they're kind of getting where you're safe here and you can survive here, but they're not getting into the and you can thrive and succeed part. So, um, but when I think about, I'm getting to know Auckland Council at the moment because I just started there a couple of months ago. And so many of the initiatives in my framework are already in place there. They probably just need an extra lens just to consider the intersectionality between, like leadership programs and then rainbow inclusion and actually design those in to your existing programs. You don't necessarily need to set up bespoke programs for every marginalized group, right? Because that's not principles around universal design that we all like to aspire to. But it's about how do we weave these intersections into our existing programs, and how do we build our own competency and capability so that we're equipped to do that? Or do we need to engage professionals to do that? So it's kind of leading organizations. The framework is about leading them into thinking very consciously about that stuff.
Absolutely. Um, flipping the lens a teeny bit, because I like that idea of putting the lens on it so people can see what it is that you're actually applying and feel good about it. What's one thing rainbow professionals, may really need from leadership, but rarely either ask for or identify?
I think the thing that seems to be most missing is a genuine, explicit, like welcoming. So it's like, we'll there seemed to be from the research participants this real sense of like I'm kind of tolerated in my workplace. The policies say that I'm included and welcome, but the way the leadership behaves doesn't necessarily make me feel like I am actually free to just drop the masks that I bring to work every day and be myself. So there's this real thread of emotional exhaustion that came out in my research participants that was just like I'm constantly having to plan ahead, whether it's how I dress, how I talk about my partner, how I show up in a meeting, whether I do apply for that promotion or not because the manager is a known homophobe, or, there's all this constant like extra layer of second guessing every choice you make in your career, whether it's, daily attire versus achieving your career goals, because there's this added complexity of navigating people's biases. So I think that's the thing that I most needs work for me is the human beings in these executive positions and the leadership positions, they really need to lean into understanding these challenges more and put themselves in a position where they actually are learning more about the experiences of their rainbow communities who are working for them.
Mm. That's you've blown my mind. That's something as sort of, universally basic, which is how do you communicate that someone is welcomed and not only to contribute and collaborate, but to show, like we keep talking about showing up authentically as that was sort of the post-COVID, phrase. And then, those of us who are found to be maybe just a smidge too loud, we're asked maybe just a little less authenticity, please.
Yeah,
But that's something as simple as creating that welcome and saying, this is, here's what do you need to be you here, is far out. I was not expecting that answer. I really wasn't. You've thrown me off my rhythm, pal.
I'm not sorry about it.
I'm not either. I feel like you've just changed my life completely. Like I'm like gonna go, I'm rethinking onboarding completely right now. That is beautifully simple and really easy to do, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Once
Yeah.
you understand that you've got that gap, it's actually really easy to build the capability and the competency, because there's plenty of resources out there, including my framework, but many, many more. And there's plenty of professionals in New Zealand who work in rainbow inclusion education that can come and support you on your journey.
Well, now I'm flummoxed. I really am. So that makes me, so let's make this easy for leaders who are listening in or who will be listening in. So complete this sentence for me.
Mhm.
The future of leadership is,
Understanding the lived experiences of your marginalized communities that are working for you.
yeah, knowing who they are and what their lives are like.
Correct. Yeah.
Far out. Um, What's one I'm still reeling from like, oh, you should just ask people what it feels like to be included. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. We had a very similar moment when we were learning about pronouns here, and the number one thing again you can do is ask people what their pronouns are so that you can refer to them correctly. Which has also, I think, changed a lot of the ways that we've communicated with people. Um, and that simple gesture as well creates that a sense of what is it like to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me about one myth that you came either through your research or through your professional organizational approach. You know, what's one myth about inclusion that we really need to move past?
Um, for me, I think this this was really impactful for me was going through the whole process of researching an evidence-based framework for rainbow communities and coming out the other side realizing actually this framework could apply to any marginalized community. So you could go through the report that I've put out into the world to Beyond a Rainbow Ceiling framework, and you could just replace rainbow with an ethnic minority or religious minority or neurodivergent people or maybe disabled people in workplaces. And the same initiatives and the same challenges are shared by all of these different, very hugely diverse, but the impact of marginalization and the way that shows up in workplaces is very, very similar for each of these sets of marginalized communities. So that was something that really blew me away, was actually this isn't rainbow specific. These initiatives aren't just going to help rainbow people. If you apply this lens to any other marginalized communities in your workplace, you are going to help enable them to be included, to be safe, and then hopefully moving into being successful and thriving.
Mm, fabulous. Love it. Okay, I forgot, of course, as is my wont, to remind people that if you have questions, get them in now so that we can answer them for you. Um, but I will ask one more because I hold the mic. Um, let's see if we can apply this. So if someone were thinking as well about whether they belong in a place like Academy X, especially if they've never thought of themselves as a typical student or if they've seen themselves reflected in leadership spaces before, what would you say to them?
I would say absolutely go for it. The experience I had was that the team really gets behind you at Academy X. The they're so supportive and enabling. I felt really confident along the whole journey that it was impossible to fail. They because you're just so well supported. If you're as long as I was willing to put in the time and the energy, um, and commit to that, like I will give my time, my focus, my energy, the program itself and the people who are running the program teach you and guide you everything else you need to know. So you can show up not having a clue what's about to happen to you and succeed and achieve and get to the end of the journey and have a great photo of graduation like I do.
It is one of the best photos I've seen in a really, really long time, I have to say. Oh goodness. Max, I cannot thank you so much for joining us today and with your mic drop moments of really, really simple things we can do to make the world better, not only from making sure you've got enough resilience, but also just reaching out humanly and asking what's your experience like and what can I do to make it better. It's really simple stuff, sometimes being a human in this world, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yep. Just listen to others. It's
Fab.
often the solution to most problems.
I believe that, and remind everyone where they can find your framework, because I would hate for them not to walk away not knowing where to find more information.
Right, so you can download a copy of the framework at tapin.co.nz. That's tapin.co.nz, and the framework's freely available, and would encourage you to share it far and wide.
Having read the framework, I highly recommend it. 2 thumbs up, muy bueno. As I said, it's things I'm looking at it, thinking about how we bring it into our own, into leadership as well, because it's so clearly articulates the challenge as well as some really practical steps to take that are easy to do. So well done. I can see why you won your big award.
Oh, thank you very much.
You went, Yahoo! Max, thank you again for joining us, sharing your story with just the most immense clarity and heart and uh, deep, deep courage and care. Your work reminds us again, what's possible when we combine all those things together. And it's been an absolute privilege to walk through this journey with you. Thank you so much. Namahi nui. I go well, and keep us posted on how we can help.
Kia ora, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. We will see all listeners, active, present, and future, in about a month. Maheshi? Yes, about a month. So stay tuned. And again, this was Max Wallace, and you are extremely exceptional. Thank you guys. Have a great day.